So yeah, this is a little talk about different routes into the games industry. I thought what might be interesting is that I've been making games for about 25 years, and Jess has been alive for about 25 years. So we have very different perspectives on where the industry's at and where things are going and how best to kind of approach that. So I'll be looking at it from an employer's perspective, from like how you can best impress me and how to get into games in various different disciplines. And Jess will then talk about her more recent experience of actually joining games and what you can do to impress the likes of me. So she's going to go away now. She will be back. So we work for a company called Shatter. It was founded in 2014. There's 9 of us now. Just some background in case you care. Based in Bristol. And we've been remote working since 2020, as have quite a lot of our compatriots. We've made various titles of different scales and genres over the years. Most notably recently, a game called Fights in Tight Spaces, which is a turn-based deck building strategy game where you smash men's faces into things in bathrooms, ostensibly. So this is sort of a kind of encapsulation of various things that I've thought about as we've been employing people and growing company over a period of time, both for Shatter and my experience in larger companies earlier in my career. But I think one of the first things you can do, one of the most important things you can do, and that you're all sort of doing now, is networking. Even if you're not looking for a job immediately, even if you're still in school or in university or college or whatever, like the earlier you get to meet the people who are going to be deciding what your career ends up being, the better, because they will remember you later on. So get to know them, get to understand what everyone in the industry is doing, kind of find out who is the movers and shakers and spend time understanding who's looking for what jobs over time and where new studios are starting. Just really invest yourself in the wider picture of what games is, and not with that, not kind of deliberately kind of tracking people down and going, I need a job sometime. More about kind of just gently learning about the process, especially local meetups, finding out who's near to you, because they will be your best and easiest way into the industry. Games events, national games events like this. Don't be afraid to say hello to people. When you're walking around the show today, go up to people who are demoing their games, and if they've worked on the games, tell them what you're interested in, tell them what you do. And they will remember you in future potentially, and then you can use that as a way in. Don't take that too far. Like, everyone is normal people, right? Don't be too aggressive. Don't expect people to give you something straight out of the bat. Just understand boundaries and understand that people are relating to one another as real human beings. And then follow up. If people tell you they're interested in what you're doing, get in contact with them. I've had this in the past. I've met people who are like, oh, I've got these skills. And I'm like, oh, we need those skills. And then they just do nothing. And then I'm like, you have missed an opportunity there, and we've missed an opportunity there. So if someone expresses an interest in you, the very least you can do is kind of follow up that interest. And people talk. Like, make sure that if you're good and interesting and people get to know you, then they will tell their friends who are working in the industry and tell people they've worked with before. So, like, investing time in making yourself someone who people know and recognize to be a good person or an interesting person or a skillful person, that is all time well spent, even if it doesn't immediately lead to employment opportunities. So next stuff, like, be making stuff as much as you can, as much as you've got time for making games or making things relating to games. Your portfolio will be the biggest thing that anyone looks at when you're applying for a job, whether a coder or an artist or an audio person or whatever. Like, the things you have done are going to make the biggest difference. Generally, quality is more important than quantity. If you've worked on something that really is extra impressive, don't include a bunch of other stuff that isn't. That said, try and have a variety of things in your portfolio. Like, give the biggest and best selection of the things you've got and update it regularly so that you're always looping in the best stuff rather than like letting your 3-year-old work that maybe was good at the time, but now you've done better stuff. Let that speak for you. And that includes everything. Your uni work, any work experience you've done, your hobby work, like it all counts. It doesn't matter if it hasn't been done as work experience, it's still experience of working on games or art or whatever. If you've worked on team projects, it's particularly important for uni work. It's really useful for us to know what exactly you did, because otherwise we don't know. Like you could have spent one day with that team and then fucked off. So it's really useful to know where you stand on those things. Game jams. If you have the opportunity to do them and you have the time and you have the resources, then games jams are really good for lots of reasons. You can meet people. You can meet people you might want to work with in the future or might want to employ you. So that will include people from industry. Industry people will take part in games jams fairly regularly. So it's a great way to introduce yourself to them and to participate in things. You can learn from others. You have the opportunity for gaining knowledge from other people who work on those games jam projects. And it's a great opportunity to work in a team, and we kind of will respect that when you are coming to us looking for jobs. And it's a good opportunity to try out new tools and techniques. If you've been used to using one engine, it might give you an opportunity to use another engine, to give you an opportunity to try different art styles or whatever. Like it's kind of free opportunity for you to expand on your knowledge and your portfolio and all of those things. And you also learn to build stuff quite quickly. And that's always kind of it's a nice thing to have. Like if we can see a good games jam project, then we can see where you can add to a team in useful ways. Not all, like it used to be the case that games jams are mostly physical events. Now there's loads and loads of online ones. So itch.io has got like an ever-evolving list of games jams that are available that you can kind of take part in constantly, all day, every day if you wanted. So find stuff that you're interested in and join in those and push that stuff up and just let us know about it, because it's really good for us to see what people are doing. Similarly, when you get to the applying for jobs end, do your research. Know what a company does and what they don't do. Don't pretend that you're going to create a massively multiplayer online game with a team that only makes 2D platformers. Like, we understand that you're applying for lots of jobs, so you're going to have fairly generic approaches to people, but like if you send us a message saying I really enjoyed your game X and we've never worked on the game X, we will treat that as a sign that you haven't really put your heart and soul into your application to us. And understand the role that you're applying for as well. If you're a game designer, go for game design roles. If you're an artist, go for artist roles. Don't conflate the two and say, oh, well, I do a bit of UI design, so I'm a game designer. No, we know that you're not that. Do apply for the jobs that you're interested in and that you can do from whatever discipline they are. And some employers are very tight on this and others a bit loose. Keep your CV as short as you can meaningfully make it. We're going to look at the headlines. We're going to look at the important stuff. We don't really care about the kind of long histories. It's the things that are most appealing to us. Center those things, bring them up. Send us a cover email telling us why you're interested in our particular job. That really helps us kind of get an angle on what you are and what you're doing. And by all means, speculatively apply for jobs at companies that you like, but don't necessarily expect kind of major responses from that, like especially in small companies like ours. We don't have a huge amount of time for that, but we will. If we see something interesting, we will pounce on it. So don't be disheartened if you don't get a response from that. It's not because we don't like you, it might just be because it's not the right time or not the right person. So that's going to happen. Yeah. Tell the truth. There has been a thing recently where people have said, "Oh, you've got to sort of lie to even get your foot in the door." No, do not do that. That's wrong. Because we will know, and if we don't know, we will find out, and then it will be a terrible thing for all of us. And more broadly than that, don't start any relationship on a lie. It's just general life advice. Broaden your horizons. One thing that has happened recently is that games as platforms has become a thing. So people have invested all of their time in Minecraft and Minecraft mods and Fortnite and all of these things that are wide worlds, and they can spend their entire time playing that one game. And that is brilliant for them as gamers. It's not so great for them as potential employees for us, because people need to have an understanding of how games work and different mechanics from different worlds. So even just trying out stuff that you you wouldn't necessarily play yourself, but give yourself an opportunity every now and again to just go out there and try something different. Come along to a place like this, play all the different games, even not the stuff that you were expecting to see, because it gives you context for when you're working on something that you wouldn't necessarily play yourself, but you will have an understanding of how those games work and the sort of skills that are required. Seek inspiration outside of games, but not just Alien and Lord of the Rings, like other things. And if you're an artist, then as much as you can vary your art style, it's difficult. You might have a thing that you particularly love doing, but for us, when we're recruiting artists and animators, things, having an understanding that you could do whatever's asked of you is very different from us picking like the best of your particular style. Because ultimately we're more likely to hire a well-rounded, interesting person than we are someone who is kind of laser focused on their thing. So for those who are, we often get asked, should I get a game design degree or should I get a game specific degree? Or should I go with something more general? It doesn't necessarily matter. At the end of the university process, you are going to come out with kind of whatever you've put into it. So we will find talented people who have moved through from a non-games background, or the talented people who've moved through a games course. But if you're investing that time in yourself and doing all of that study, make sure you get the most out of it. There are schemes for new graduates. Grads in Games has got a very good site. They run a scheme called Search for a Star. That's particularly aimed at programmers, but I think they've broadened it out recently. And that's really good for visibility within the industry, and it shows like you're willing to put yourself forward for more things. Yeah, you're getting what you put out. The best graduates do get noticed. We talk, we know the courses, we know the people running the courses. They will tell us when there are good people coming through. So make sure you put your time into getting noticed on those things, because there are going to be plenty of people who don't do that, and you will just elevate yourself above them. The other question I get asked is, should you use a recruiter? For large companies, it sometimes is inevitable. They will only go through the recruiters, just because they have such a mass of applicants that it's hard for them to filter themselves. It's not always the case. For smaller companies, probably not. The overhead of having a recruiter is quite big from our point of view, and also it puts extra stages into that process. We'd rather hear from you directly if you're interested in us, because that sort of makes us more interested in you proportionally. Again, your mileage may vary. But if you're going to use a recruiter, do your homework. This is a non-exhaustive list. They're probably all represented here to some degree, and there's loads more of them. But yeah, do your homework. Find out what they're actually going to do for you, because you're going to be, it becomes a long-term relationship. So make sure they're going to actually work to find you a job, because if you're putting that work in anyway, you don't need someone else necessarily doing it for you. They're not all the same. So just a quick extra thing. I've been talking to my various colleagues in different companies, and there are a few roles at the moment that kind of are particularly hard to find. So if you're in a position where you don't know where to specialize and you're looking for some direction in that, like in the near future, then technical artists are really hard to find. So that kind of unique blend of code and art, where you're designing shaders and designing effects and various other things, and understanding all of those processes, those are very hard to find and very worthwhile. So if you're coming into the industry as maybe a junior technical artist, you might well have a greater opportunity than if you're coming in as a junior generalist coder. Same for experienced Unreal and Unity devs, especially if you're doing, if you're working for indies who are likely to be using one of the bigger engines, then having existing engine knowledge is going to be kind of handy for us. 3D character artists and animators, there's not as many coming through the process as there used to be, so good ones are equally valuable. Concept artists, asterisk, there are loads of concept artists. 90% of them are quite poor. So if you're a good concept artist, brilliant, come and see us. That's just the facts. Also UI, UX designers, people who understand games who haven't necessarily come, there's lots of UI, UX jobs in kind of making apps and making websites and all of that kind of stuff. People who specialize in doing that for games, or people who've done it for other disciplines but who understand games, really very useful. Everyone needs one. It's a sought after role. But these will change over time, so if you're just starting out your journey into getting into games, don't necessarily aim for all of these straight away, but if you're somewhere in and you want direction, then that's what you might want to do. So, I shall now introduce Jess, who is going to talk to you from her perspective about getting a job in the games industry.
Thank you. Yeah, a clap for James for all of that. Thank you. Also, it's not the technically beginning of the presentation, but it's the beginning of mine, the employee. So a little bit about myself, first of all. I've been in the industry for 3 years. I got the job straight out of uni, so hopefully the advice I give you is going to be helpful. But also, at the same time, like, don't sweat it and stuff. And it's probably going to be a little bit of an info dump, so I apologize in advance if I speak quickly. So to start, you're job searching, of course, you're trying to get in the games industry. And what do? You can use obvious websites, like you go in Indeed and, you know, try and like find your way through there. But I'm just going to offer some like other potential websites that you can use as well. So using video game job websites like Games Direct or GamesIndustry.biz and stuff, and making sure that you're looking specifically into like the actual video game side of it. Or you can search up company websites and look at like what they have on their positions and like their side of it. There'll probably be a lot more options in bigger companies and stuff, but still looking at indie studios is very important. And explore job websites that aren't technically in the video game industry. The way I found my job actually was through an animation and storyboard job website, which was kind of wild. It was maybe like 2 video game job offers out of like the 70 that were there, but I spotted it and applied and I got it, so, you know. And then also keep up to date on LinkedIn. They give like the job listings and stuff, so long as you're active and all that. And same with Facebook too, because you can join like job not websites, job groups and all that. And a lot of work is through word of mouth as well. So making sure that you're on social media and that you're actually keeping active and stuff on it is super important. Which leads into networking. It's not scary. Making friends is great. So long as you like politely chat to them, you can ask them for advice and stuff on how they got into the industry, and generally just trying to keep up those connections. Don't just contact big companies though. It's really tempting to want to go for the big names and stuff because they're super successful, but looking local and looking like indie as well can be really, really important, because those in-person connections are so good for you, so good for networking and stuff. And likewise, forming those in-person connections and stuff through attending game jams and all that. And keeping active in the events. So long as you're attending them, you're making it kind of a name for yourself, you know, showing your face and being friendly, like people will be more inclined to talk to you, want to like keep up those connections. And then maintain your current network with your classmates or your coursemates as well. Super important. Again, like a lot of my other animation jobs and stuff came from word of mouth. People who I was on the course with, and they'd be like, hey Jess, do you want to have a look at that? And that was a gateway into this job too. So super important to make sure that you're not just seeing your classmates and coursemates as competition, but you're seeing them as teammates, because you're all in it together basically. And while you're doing all of this, while you're searching and networking stuff, I want you to have a think, like keep these prompts in mind. What does your role consist of? What does your job consist of? How much do you know about the company? Is your portfolio suited to the company you're applying to? What do you bring to the interview? And what red flags should you look out for? So we're just going to answer all of these, basically. Starting with your research. So your job. You want to know what the pay bracket is for junior, mid, and senior levels. You also want to know what the average workload is like, so you get an idea on what's expected of you. And then also where most of the jobs are based. Since COVID, everybody's been working more remote and hybrid and stuff now, so there isn't too much of a worry about it, but it's still important to know based on your preferences and stuff. The studio. What games do they make? Obviously. How big is their team? What's their reputation like? And what type of portfolios are they looking for? Which brings me to my next point, making your portfolio sparkle. So you want to tailor your portfolio to the company. It's a really obvious and general advice and stuff, but still very important. And think about what they might do in the future. So you don't just want to think about what they're putting out right now, but imagine what they might want to make in the future and see if you can present ideas for that. Or not ideas necessarily to make them do or anything, but you might be surprised. How does each piece of your portfolio correlate to the work? So this is especially applicable if you're in the art side of everything. And I'm going to dissect a little bit of what I put in my show reel. But I am not going to show you my actual animation clips because they're 3 years old, they're trash now, and I'd rather you guys had a much better impression of my work. So I did creature animations because video games have monsters in them, they have enemies in them. I want to show that I can do more than just basic character animation. Reload animation, so for guns and weapons, again, another very typical thing that you see in games. Body mechanics for attacks and all that. And then character animation for cinematics. And some important advice for it, you're not showing what you've done. So you might be tempted to add everything into your show reel and your portfolio because you've done so much work during your course or uni, but in reality, the sad truth is that you're only as good as your worst work, so you want to show them that you're good. You want to show them that the work you're doing is what you can do, and they'll be impressed by that a lot more than they are impressed by the quantity of what you do. And don't sweat interviews, they're fine. You're more than your work at the end of the day. You're a person, you want to show them that you're a person and not just rely solely on the work that you present. So be friendly and show that you're good to work with. Show that you're adaptable and your skills are transferable as well. This is especially important if you're applying to small studios or indies because they might need you to be a bit more general than what your actual specification is. And take interest in the studio. Nothing is boring at the end of the day. You can definitely find something to be interested in, even if it's not the exact specific type of work that you want to get into. Anything is good at the end of the day. And always have some questions. Questions show that you're engaged. They show that you're taking in the information, that you want to learn more about the company. So here are some prompts that you could use. How does the company foster professional development? What does the company do to encourage culture? And is there any feedback that they could give you on your portfolio? These are also kind of corporate-y questions, so maybe phrase them to be a bit more human, but still good questions to ask. And red flags. So, bad rep. Obviously, expecting you to work out of hours, it shows that their work-life balance isn't good, basically, and you want to be able to value your life outside of work at the same time. Treating your work poorly in the interview. This might just be some small comments or anything, but you still want to be wary because the work atmosphere that you want to go into is it doesn't need to be wholesome. They don't need to be complimenting everything, but there's a difference between being critically analyzing your work and smack talking, basically. And that links into lacking of professionality and stuff. That can be dominating characters and stuff, aggressiveness, and just things that you should watch out for. Expecting you to be a heavy drinker. So I put heavy in brackets because a lot of people tend to drink alcohol anyway, but you shouldn't be expected to drink anything at the end of the day. There is a little story about one of my mates who is in a completely different industry, but she ended up missing out on a lot of promotions and group activities because everything was happening in the pub because her company were going to the pub every night. And sometimes that's fine if you want to like hang out with your colleagues and stuff. There's a difference between being healthy and centering your work around like alcohol, essentially. Acting inappropriately, it kind of links into professionality and stuff. You want to make sure that the work that you go into, the company that you join, is still professional to agree. Like, you can still, again, have like really friendly connections and stuff, like you can be mates with everybody, but you want to make sure that everything is still professional. The phrase, we work on weekends because we're just passionate and we don't want to let the team down. This is a red flag. This is guilting and manipulating. It suggests that if you don't do this, if you don't put in the work, and if you don't take time away from your own life, that you're gonna fail the team, you're gonna let them down and stuff. And that's just, I mean, it sounds like a red flag. I think we can all agree on that. And likewise with, it's just banter, mates. Is it banter or is it rude? Like, there is a line. And it's the end of the presentation. That's my part of it. I also didn't want to end on a negative note or anything. I've been in the industry for 3 years, and I absolutely love it. And everybody that I've met is amazing. They're iconic, and I genuinely think that if you join, you'll have a great time. But that's just some things I want you to look out for. So, yes. Shall I go back down?
No,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, if anyone's got any questions now, I believe will run at you with a microphone, and you can ask those questions. Any questions?
Yes. Hey, so I noticed you're you're an animator. How did you start off with actually getting into animation?
So originally I was actually going to go into film and TV, but I'd been a gamer since I was so much younger, and I fell in love with 3D animation and stuff, and creating short films and all that. And when I saw that actually being a video game animator is like a viable, opportunity, is a viable career and stuff, I just absolutely pedaled towards that and tried to take in all the information I could from other animators. I contacted loads of people from other companies and stuff and asked about how their work life was as an animator, and it just made me love it more, and then I just got into it that way.
So where did you kind of find those connections?
So I found a lot of my connections through LinkedIn, but I also I would look up animators on Twitter and all that too. I follow loads of them, like people from a lot of big companies and stuff as well, because they have loads of followers already. They're very visible and very easy to find. So if you find them there or find them again on LinkedIn or something, their email, just send them a really polite email being like, hey, love your work. I was wondering if you could maybe give me a few pointers or something, and hopefully they'll respond.
Any more? Oh, excellent.
Hi there. This is a question about games jams, because I've been hearing about. This is a question about games jams, because I've been hearing the word games jams quite a lot today. Can you please describe what they are? Because normally, doesn't a game take a few years or at least a few months to make? So isn't it something you have to repeatedly keep in touch with someone rather than, hey, let's meet up for a few hours and then back up?
Yeah, so did you hear that? Yeah, so question broadly about what our games. So yeah, no, the Games Jams kind of distills down what we do over a longer project into a very short period of time. Kind of traditionally they've been kind of very short 24-hour things where people stay up and work overnight. That's kind of gone away a bit. They tend to be a little bit longer now, but people work more sensible hours, which is nice. But yeah, it's not necessarily about creating the most polished and production-ready game, or even one that looks nice behind the scenes, but it's about trying stuff out. So it's about giving us, the whole point of a Games Jam is just about giving yourself the opportunity to work with people you wouldn't have worked with before, or do things you wouldn't have otherwise done, and in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise done them. So it's an opportunity for learning as much as anything.
Any more questions for these lovely two?
So if you have questions you want to ask us immediately, come and grab us. If not, we're doing like the one-to-one portfolio review type things tomorrow. So I'll be there 11 till 1 over there. Jess and our lead artist Dave will be there between 1 and 3. So if you have art stuff you want them to review or you want to talk about what they've done or anything else, just come and find us. Otherwise, thank you. Enjoy your EGXs.